bloody. At least for some of them. All right, so we'll start. My name is Matt, if you haven't figured that out. And I forget where the lady was that went to Mississippi, right there. Yeah, that was funny, wherever that is. But I'm from Mississippi. How many of you were on the cemetery tour last night? Did you enjoy the show? He did apologize. He called me. All right. So what I'm going to do with, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to set up the big picture as I usually do, and then we're going to work our way down to the small picture. So if you don't know what we're doing today, I don't know what we're doing either. My third 10-hour day, and I'm 10 or 12-hour day, and I'm tired. But the music muster goes on, so I'll see you tonight at the PA Memorial if it doesn't rain. Okay, so I'll be there. All right, so take me a minute. I just had that Coke, so usually it takes about 18 minutes for a Coke to kick in for Matt. It used to be 12, but I've got a tolerance. All right, so big picture first. We're standing on McPherson Ridge. North, west, east, south, going through here. So big picture is this. We're going to be talking about Perrin's brigade, which is basically a unit of South Carolinians. I'll get into Army organization in a minute. But specifically, big picture, we're talking about the first day of the battle. And we're pretty much talking about, what would this be? What I would label the third attack. Some people would say the second attack, but the third attack of the Confederates on July 1st. So it'll take me a minute to work around to the actual point where we're going to be following these units today. Needless to say, starting with that, you got A.P. Hill's Corps, which is out here to the west. If you don't know A.P. Hill, he's a Jim Dandy right there. You better have a lot of memory on your phone. He is a Jim Dandy out to the west, and he's got some issues. One, he's apparently pretty sick down at the Cashtown Inn. The other thing is, though, he doesn't know where the Union Army is. He doesn't believe that the Union Army is up ahead. He has roughly, if he had all of his army together, he has roughly, his corps together, he has roughly around 20,000 men. On the morning of July 1st, he's going to start pushing out. And this is where we start breaking it down to Perrin's brigade. He has 3 divisions in his corps. All right? What are the 3 divisions?
Fender, E.
That's right. And what initials are those?
APH.
A.P. Hill. All right. Oh, we got some competition. He's filming too. You might want to swap things right there. There went the jokes. So, you got Anderson, Pender, and Heath. On the morning of July 1st, 2 divisions are pushing down the turnpike. I would number them around 6,000 to 7,000 men per division. I'm including artillerymen and everything else that comes with it. But Heath's division is leading the advance. Usually they say around 7:30. I saw Eric Wittenberg speak at, and you can check it out on C-SPAN if you'd like. I believe it's Emerging Civil War or something, but last weekend I saw him speak down in Fredericksburg, and it was probably the most detailed account I've ever seen of the cavalry fighting on July 1st. So if you're interested in that aspect, dial it. It's on C-SPAN 3, or I think it's online now. But I've never seen anybody go into that much detail as far as the regiments and how they deployed. But needless to say, the Confederate infantry is coming down Highway 30, which is that highway right over there behind you, ma'am. I like your hat, by the way. And about 2 miles outside of town over there, the Union cavalry bumps into the Confederate infantry, and they start shooting. Bam, 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 bam. The Confederate infantry is going to stop. They're going to deploy. And then Harry Heath is going, the division commander is going to start to press that Union cavalry back toward Gettysburg. It's going to take them, depends on who you're talking to, it's going to take them about 2.5 hours. The first shot, this is what Wittenberg said, one shot basically from the Union cavalry delayed that Confederate division for 2 hours. The point is, I keep all this in mind, it works up to a point where we're standing in right here. But eventually the Confederates are going to reach the next ridge over. Really can't see it that well, but it's in that direction off to the west. By that time, Harry Heath can see Gettysburg. If you look back behind you, you can see sort of what he's looking at. Wouldn't have been that many buildings, wouldn't have been as dense. He may have could have seen a little bit further in the town than we can today. But regardless, he can see his objective. And Heath is tired of being delayed by this Union cavalry. So he starts to push in. So 9 o'clock, around 10 o'clock in the morning, these woods in 1863 would have been a lot more open. There would have been animals that were grazing in it. So the woods are the same parameter, but they're thicker. You could see further inside of them, into the interior. So coming up through here is going to be Heath's battle line, specifically Archer's brigade, Tennessee and Alabama boys. As they start to ascend this hill, approximately right here, probably right back behind you where the modern road is, a line of Union infantry shows up. And these guys are wearing big black hats. And they instantly, the Rebs know they are the Iron Brigade. Why do they know that? Because of the black hats right there. Point is, wrap it all in together, the Union cavalry delays the Confederate infantry long enough for the Union infantry to come up and stop them. And the great thing about the battlefield, if you want to talk about tactical situations, is you can literally see how close the Union Army was to the town of Gettysburg. I mean, it was really nip and tuck. I always like to say you couldn't have written a movie script any better than that. I mean, the heroes, if you want to call them heroes, you know what side you're from. Show up in the last moment right over here, and they push the villains back down the hill. My Yankee friend. So, Confederates are repulsed. In this action, in the same action, there's a sharp engagement right across the highway. To put it all in the context, that's when the railroad cut happens. If you're familiar with that, hundreds of Confederates are captured in that railroad cut, including some of my fellow Mississippians, the majority of them. So anyway, big story is the initial Confederate attack gets repulsed and the Confederates fall back over here to the next ridge, basically where they started from, and they lick their wounds. They got a problem. They got a lot of problems. But one of the problems they have is that they're under orders not to bring on a general engagement. In other words, don't pick a fight until all your friends get here, okay? And because of that, now Heath has stumbled into the Union Army. Any of y'all see the movie? I do not know what is in front of me. It could be the entire Union Army. Is there some way you misunderstood my orders, General Heath? No, sir. The boys that got the danger up. Oh, the boys. That's right. That is from that. That's right. That's good. That's right. It's been a few years since I saw that. For the serious Gettysburg buff, you can go to YouTube and see the outtakes. What do you call it? The edited, extended director's cut. You know what I mean? All right, so Rebs are sitting over there licking their wounds. Now, if you haven't seen it, you have to step out a little bit in order to see off in the distance. But right over here is a clear shot, or look behind the tree, is a clear view toward that big column over there, and that's the Peace Light Monument. And the Peace Light Monument marks the location of what is called Oak Hill. And around noon, Robert Rodes' division, what you need to know is another force, big force of Confederates, is going to appear on that hill over there. Well, Rodes, long story short, is going to launch a very hasty attack, and he's going to end up getting repulsed. A lot of story that goes behind that. But what you basically have by mid-afternoon is that you have a lull with these Confederates having been repulsed in the morning, and basically these Confederates over here having been repulsed in early afternoon. And so that's sort of, we're getting really close to getting up with Perrin's brigade right now. So to back up a little bit, the morning of July 1st, A.P. Hill, as I said, the Corps commander over here at Cashtown, is not expecting an engagement. And I've always been puzzled by Hill. I have to write an article. Some of you attended that seminar this previous winter and saw that lecture. And you know, A.P. Hill, I have to write an article on A.P. Hill, and absolutely A.P. Hill is an enduring mystery as far as his role here at Gettysburg, because we just don't know where he is. So if you'd like to read my article when it's over with, you can see how you try to make 5,000 to 10,000 words out of nothing. Because I really have nothing to write about. And will not try to say anything that they no. But A.P. Hill is not up with his troops. And apparently he doesn't get up here until after the initial advance. I'd have to look at it again. But he and Robert E. Lee basically arrive not too far from each other. I think Hill gets here first, and then Lee. There's something you can go research. But it doesn't really matter. A.P. Hill, the puzzling thing to me is that somebody that wasn't expecting a fight on the morning of July 1st, A.P. Hill sends 2 divisions to Gettysburg. I already mentioned Heath, but backing up Heath is going to be Dorsey Pender's division. That's another 6,000 to 7,000 men. If you're not expecting to fight, my Lord, that's a lot of people to send. Which I have to believe he wasn't expecting to fight, but nevertheless, he's got enough firepower with him to pick anything he wants. And I wonder sometimes if Heath had been alone, if he would have pushed it so hard. If he didn't have if he didn't have his buddies behind him, you know what I mean? Like barroom etiquette right here. I always have the biggest mouth when I have my big friends with me. Always the little guy chirping in the corner. You know? So the Confederates have got a decision. Around mid-afternoon, the decision is basically made for Robert E. Lee. You can't see it, but from the north, what would that be? Basically the northeast over here. There's another Confederate division coming in under Juba Early. And when this Confederate force arrives on the field, it sets off a chain reaction where Early attacks, Rhodes attacks again, and then Heath attacks again. So what I'm telling you, this is what I call the third attack, if you're following my logic here. Some people say 2. But Heath's division is going to come up through here. They're going to pass where you see the top of that bus over there. On the other side of it is the West End Guide Station. And if you were to descend down the hill, that would be Willoughby Run. It's basically a creek. They call them runs around here. But they cross that creek right there and they start to ascend the hill. But this time the Confederates know where the Union soldiers are. And this time in the advance they've got Pettigrew's North Carolina Brigade. Where you been? All right. So as you're coming across the stream and they're starting to advance, these North Carolinians have never been in any significant combat. In other words, this Pettigrew's brigade had been swapped out for another one. I forget which one it was swapped out for. Don't leave me hanging too long. And then, that's some trivia. I don't know who would know that. But they're fat. And the 26th North Carolina specifically, I'll mention this in passing because it's a big action out here. The 26th North Carolina is roughly bringing 800 men on the field. So 800 men is a huge regiment for 1863. The average unit here is regiment is around 300. They got 800 in one unit. These North Carolinians, which are green, come up through here and they lock horns with the Iron Brigade. So what I'm telling you is, to put you on the spot, is that at least the 26th North Carolina probably suffers at least 50% casualties. We don't really know because their casualties are combined for 2 days. But they suffer significant casualties, but through strength of numbers, they managed to push the Iron Brigade all the way back through here. Now, right here where you're standing, you can imagine it better than I'm describing it. You got those black hat Union boys falling back here through the woods. And they're good soldiers. They're some of the best soldiers in the Union Army. They're Western men, Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, people like that. Anybody from there? Okay, so much for bragging for them. So no complimentary letter from them. All right, so as they start to fall back through here, the soldiers don't break. Greener soldiers probably would have a hard time maintaining the organization, especially on a retreat. But these soldiers, being veterans and being very well trained, I don't know what, I've always wondered what makes one unit better than another. But these Western men, they fall back and it is a fighting withdrawal. As they fall back through here, I've read different variations in different books of it. But apparently they stop at some point, probably around this proximity, and they fire a volley at the North Carolinians who are still pursuing them. And so that slows them down. But regardless, with one last push, the North Carolinians are going to hurl them, if you want to use that word, and push them back over this ridge. But Heath's division is out of gas. They have lost momentum. They probably shot up all their ammunition, etc., and they need reinforcements. And that's where we get to the unit which we're going to follow today, which is Perrin's brigade. Because Perrin's, let me do it again, A.P. Hill's Corps, you got Harry Heath's division, and then you got Dorsey Pender's division backing him up. Divisions are comprised of brigades, and Perrin is one of those brigades that comprise Pender's division. It's a redundant way to say it, but it's basically the way it goes. So we're going down from the big picture, we're going to follow these South Carolinians. And basically Pender's division is going to pass over Heath. Literally, North Carolinians would have been laying right here in a battle line, if you can imagine. The survivors would have been. And Pender's division is going to come up and literally walk over the top of it in the battle. Any questions about the big picture?
Where's Scales Brigade? To the north?
At this time, they're on the other side of the Chambersburg Pike, but they'll cross shortly.
Lane is over there.
Yeah, Lane is over here. Scales, Perrin, and Lane, but that's not their original deployment. And then Thomas, don't forget him.
Oh, yeah.
We never mention him,
Right.
but because he doesn't do much, but he's over there. Whew. Got that question.
How many of the Iron Brigade was there? About?
Yeah, that, you know, I would agree with that figure. The problem is, you know, they've been attacked once. I don't know what they lose in the first attack. They may have 1,400 when they began. They ain't getting 1,400 out of these woods. When they fall back, this is basically in front of you is a knockdown drag out. And I'm getting ahead of the story, but when the South Carolinians come through here, they talk about all the dead and wounded North Carolinians in these woods right here. And one of them remarks, I'll read the quote to you if I can remember, if I come across it, that they knew that these North Carolinians were green troops because only green troops would stand up and brawl, sit out in the middle of a field and shoot it out with them. Veteran troops wouldn't do that, but they would close with the enemy. That reduces casualties. Either you get repulsed or they flee. But one way or the other, you're not going to sit out there and just bleed. And that's what basically the North Carolinians did. They didn't know any better. I thought that was a telltale sign. They could probably tell by their uniforms too. Yes?
Where's Doubleday?
Well, I don't know his physical presence, location, but he's basically up and down this line. He goes through here. Who's that guy? Oh, it's another tour. He might be better than me. Better joke. Do any work? Now, one of the interesting things, talking about Doubleday, sir, and I'll read over my notes and see if I leave out anything because I seem to be progressing pretty fast. But it's about this time when the Union troops are withdrawing, and that's where we're headed. They're withdrawing back toward town. The Union First Corps, follow me here. This is John Reynolds. Remember, he was killed, and I should have mentioned this, but it's not the point. John Reynolds is killed within the first 15 minutes of that first attack right there. What he's referring to is Doubleday takes over for Reynolds in command of this Union First Corps. But it's around this time when Pender's division is starting its attack that the artillery commander for the First Corps, a guy by the name of Charles Wainwright, is going to receive a message from the big boss, which is now that Reynolds is dead, is now a guy by the name of O.O. Howard. And basically, Howard's men, or the 11th Corps, and I imagine the staff had to reflect this to a certain extent, have a lot of German Americans on it. Now, whatever, you know, neither here nor there, but a lot of them probably English is their secondary language. Okay? So, putting it bluntly here, a messenger arrives. I don't remember if the messenger is known. Okay, you think about that. And so, Wainwright is told to fall back to the cemetery. He's told to bring the guns back, the artillery back to the cemetery. Well, the guy that gives him the message may have been speaking in broken English. All right, so what ends up happening, ladies and gentlemen, is that Wainwright's never been here before. And so when that German, you did very well hiding that yawn right there. I just want you to know. You know I pick on people that are yawning. Wainwright looks around. He's never been to Gettysburg before. He looks around. He's standing up here, and look behind you. What is that over there?
Seminary.
Cemetery. Wainwright's like, oh, well, that must be where he wants me. And so, because of a mishap, it really actually, I don't know if nobody that gets shot would agree with this, but it actually kind of turns out to be a good thing for the Union in the end. I mean, it won't in the very end, but the Union inadvertently, the Union First Corps inadvertently is going to make a stand right over there, and that's where we're headed, getting down to the small picture. That's why we're going to cross this field and follow Perrin's brigade right here. Wainwright has, in total, I'm talking about north and south of the Pike right here, he has 21 cannon on either side. And when the cannon deploy along Seminary Ridge, the infantry, when they're falling back, including the Iron Brigade, etc., are going to fall in to support the cannon. And so what you have, in a nutshell, the remnants of what's been pushed out here, the Union forms a makeshift battle line on Seminary Ridge in that area. And all because of a misunderstanding. Any questions? It's a nice shirt, you have to admit. It's a nice shirt.
So the
Yes.
cemetery that he was supposed to fall back to was the one on the other side of town?
Yes, he was supposed to fall back to where Abraham Lincoln later dedicated it. Where the National Cemetery is today, on the opposite side of town. Now, what I don't know, and I've always been curious about the Battle of Gettysburg, is the timing of everything, because I don't want to get out too much in the weeds, but basically you have Union perfect. You have Union forces that are facing to the north, and you have Union forces that are facing to the west. So what I don't know, I've always been curious about, is who broke first. Was it her or was it me? Because they're getting attacked from the Confederates from the north, and they're getting attacked, the Confederates are attacking them from this way. Does that make sense to everybody? So as far as the First Corps, Union First Corps deploying on Seminary Ridge, it makes sense in one regard, you know, to try to hold on to this town, if the 11th Corps, which is this lady in red right here, the Hamilton lady, that didn't get to see the place, so don't ask her about it, okay? She just got the t-shirt. Just saving you the trouble, okay? You gonna blush over that one? All right, go. It's okay. They'll spend up every dime they got before they die, and then you'll have to bail them out. You'll be the executor. So, don't worry. It happens. So you're not fleeing yet, okay? So, I don't know which breaks. If the Union First Corps is falling back to Seminary Ridge and making a stand there, then I have to assume that the 11th Corps is still holding. But I always thought in the back of my mind that she broke before I did. So if she breaks before I do, and you got Rebs coming from there, where are the Rebs going to go? They're going to come behind you, behind me. And that's not a good position either to be in. Yes?
Considering the pressure the Iron Brigade was under, where was Biddle?
Biddle is over here, basically when you enter the tool road between here and the highway over here. Now Pettigrew's brigade, to back up, is so big, as I've already said. They stretch basically almost to the Fairfield Road, Hagerstown Road over there. So literally you have one Confederate brigade taking on two, is what I'm telling you. I could look up, I think it's the 47th, and there's another regiment down there. Thanks a lot. All right, so little rusty this morning. So as they're coming up through here, Biddle's brigade falls back about, I would suppose, about the same time as the Iron Brigade. But in a nutshell, the Union troops are in the same order when they fall back to Seminary Ridge as they were here on, what is it, Oak Ridge? Any other questions?
Yeah, Matt. When
St. John. You've been here a few
when
days.
it seemed like the Confederates had the manpower advantage, when that eventually developed, was that when Jubal Early's troops came in? And how far did they have to come to get to this area?
Well, Juba Early was probably the tail end as far as the Confederates coming from the north. They're the last division. I'd have to look up to see where they started from. But they had to have the furthest away because they arrived here last. I would assume that.
They came in from Wrightsville.
Yeah, but how many days is what I'm saying. I mean, he's asking probably the encampment the night before. I don't think they could hike it in one day. Not from Wrightsville. Maybe they could. I mean, they are Supermen, but
Yeah, they came late in the day.
it's a matter, I would answer it a different way because I don't know. I think the way I perceive the question is Robert E. Lee knew he had more men, and so therefore he started punching in. I don't know if he knows that or not. I think it's more of a, if I'm answering the question correctly, I think it's more of the tenor of the personality of his commanders, his subordinates. And as I've said many times, what Robert E. Lee wants is very aggressive combat commanders. So Early is not really worried about whether he's outnumbered in front or not. All he knows is he's got the Union 11th Corps. And if he was outnumbered 2-1, he could whoop them any day of the week. And that's basically his mentality. The Southerners are they're going to wait in there and just get whipped or get whipped. That's what they're going to do. Pugnacious. You know? You're going to walk on the field, you just ain't going to take crap off nobody. You know, it's all about attitude. If it was in the modern day, Juba Early would have tweeted O.O. Howard and told him, hashtag, what was it, ready to fight? Something like that. Can you imagine the smack talk that would go on if they had Twitter in the Civil War?
You can go on the internet. Somebody's had a Twitter account for Gettysburg.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. Early's handle is not late.
Oh.
Armistead says, "I got a plate for you, Early."
I got a plate for you. Yeah. You'd have to explain on that joke, but that's funny. That's funny. I like that. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry. One over there.
Usually you're told that the 11th Corps broke all the way over to Barlow's Knoll, and that caused this line to have to retreat. Does that happen later in the day, or when does that happen?
Well, ma'am, that's going back to what I said earlier. I've always, I've been told, what my belief is, the 11th Corps broke first. What I'm confused about is the timing of the whole thing. Was the 11th, for instance, was the 11th Corps breaking as these men are falling back over here to Seminary Ridge, or were they already on Seminary Ridge when the 11th Corps broke? I don't know. But I would always say, and there are some people, I have to say this, there are some people that argue, I would say they're in the minority, but it's like Sickles, you know, you're always going to have some people that defend his actions. There's some, it's not that big a deal, but there's some people that argue the first Corps broke first, or that they broke simultaneously.
And I was going with simultaneously, and the reason I say that is that Robinson's troops are in town before von Almsberg and Schimmelpfennig's are. So if Robinson is breaking at the same time that Barlow is, that they're basically breaking at the same time. And that von Almsberg is the last one out in the field in that area.
We're talking about on the north side of town, and the fighting withdrawal. I guess you could say
Robinson's in town before the last brigade of the 11th Corps.
yeah, I'm trying to think of the brigade at the Brickyard.
Costa?
That's a 330.
See, I am human. Y'all come out here, see how you get off in like the weeds. None of y'all know what the heck we're talking about. It's an enduring mystery, but big picture is this. I mean, this is what keeps people coming back. I mean, this, if you want to know if this is your first time to Gettysburg, this is what people do late at night in these bars. They sit there and they argue over which broke first, the 1st or the 11th. Or you go to a bar and then you don't ever even talk about the Civil War. You just continue to drink all night. Leave your wife in the bed, hungover. Any other questions? I have one over here. None? All right, so what we'll do is, I could walk around. I'm not gonna do it. There's a couple ways to do the tour. I've got, I usually do Scales Brigade, which is the left side. Most of y'all have already scouted this before we do this. But I want to just stand on the ridge and do Scales. And then we'll just do one walk across the ridge, through the valley basically, and do Perrin and connect with the road. We'll have to go through the crops, but they just mowed the field. I'm very happy about that. If you've been on battle walks before, not only mine, especially Troy's, you know, you're very happy to have no grass. So when we go across the field, I'll remind you when we get ready. If we could go basically single file through the guys or girls' crops out there, because we're gonna kill something, but I want to minimize the damage as we go out there. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're not going far. I don't see a gap within that snake rail fence, but let's basically regroup under that. What is that? A pecan tree right there. Let's regroup behind that truck. Now you've got a better vantage point of Seminary. Well, let's back up a little bit and let me tell you something about Dorsey Pender. So, Corps Commander, A.P. Hill, Dorsey Pender, Division Commander. One of the 3 division commanders under A.P. Hill. Dorsey Pender is just like Rhodes, just like Early, just like Heath, personifies an aggressive combat commander. Exactly what Robert E. Lee wanted. He was a West Point graduate, and he entered the Confederate service as a captain of artillery. A short time later, Pender was elected colonel of the 3rd North Carolina Infantry. And at the Battle of Seven Pines, President Jeff Davis personally promoted him under fire to brigadier general, pending Senate approval. He led a brigade in A.P. Hill's Light Division in almost all the major battles. And if you ever follow A.P. Hill's Light Division out here, you know that in the early part of the war they were they had quite a reputation. The battles included Mechanicsville, Gaines Mill, Frazier's Farm, 2nd Manassas, Sharpsburg, Fredericksburg, and Chancellorsville. And Pender was given the command of the division prior to Gettysburg, which was basically when A.P. Hill got promoted. Right here. Oh, you're nodding your head. We got a reader right here. Okay. When A.P. Hill is promoted, he gets the Light Division. Now this is going way out in the weeds. You do not have to know this, okay? So if you're not interested, don't tune it out right here. Before you Gettysburg buffs, the Light Division was 6 brigades prior to Gettysburg, all right? What they do in the reorganization prior to Gettysburg is they take 6 of those 6 brigades, and they give 4 of them to Dorsey Pender. 2 of them, the other 2, go to Harry Heath, all right? And Heath's division is augmented with 2 fresh brigades, which includes Pettigrew, which I've already mentioned.
And Davis.
Who? Davis. Sorta. Davis is he has some veteran units and some new ones. Any questions? All right. Okay, so coming up during the advance, Perrin's brigade. Which we're getting into. I'll get into the. Oh, you missed that. No, I'll get into the strength in just a minute. Perrin is going to deploy skirmishers to the right to shield the division's flank. That would be out toward the Hagerstown Road. The long line of Confederates, if you can imagine this, advanced for approximately a mile. Then they stopped. This is before they start the attack right here. Then they stopped at a small stream, filling their canteens and resting while Heath's division made their second attack. Eventually, the division comes upon Hare's Ridge. That's that ridge that I kept pointing to where Heath fell back to, and up behind the Confederate artillery. Perrin and Lane are going to stop behind the batteries, but Scales' brigade, after a short time, advanced in front of the batteries. What I think is happening, and once again I'm getting off in the weeds right here, is that Heath's division has a brigade in it from the old Light Division, Hill's old Light Division, under Brockenbrough. And what happens to Brockenbrough on July 3rd? Not much. He runs off, okay? So whatever's happening, I don't have a solid answer for you, but there is some indication that Brockenbrough's brigade on July 1st is not doing that admirable a job as far as fighting. In fact, they probably go to ground. And that's probably why Scales' brigade is going to hasten on up ahead of Pender. Now, whether Pender's main line. So basically, they're pushing the Virginians, Brockenbrough's brigade, to get going. And I think Brockenbrough's brigade finally helps push the Bucktails out, Roy Stone's brigade out from around the McPherson barn. But Scales is a little bit of advance, and that's the reason. Okay, so Union counter battery fire is starting to fall among Scales' brigade. I love this story. One shell fragment bloodied a captain's head, and he jumped up and ran for the rear screaming, "I'm dead, I'm dead." The colonel calmly turned to the stretcher bearers and asked them to go and take that dead man off, if you can catch him. You'll have to explain to him the joke, man. Okay. Now this is where the alignment, I already described to you that Pender's got two brigades to the north side of the pike and he's got two brigades to the south. This is when they start shifting. So Pender doesn't like what he can't see over here. What he can't see, and remember you're facing as the Confederates. On your right over here, he can't see exactly where the Union troops are. It's not that he's getting any pressure, but the Hagerstown Road, if you think about it, right here, you just stand right there. If this lady right here is Pender's division, it is very easy, and this is the Hagerstown Pike, it is very easy for any Union force to basically come up here and attack Pender in the side. So what he's going to do to alleviate that situation is he's going to take one of his brigades from the left, your left over here, or the other side of the pike, and he's going to shift them to the south side of the Chambersburg Pike. That's going to be Lane's brigade. And that's how they get from the left to the right, all the way down basically to the Hagerstown Road. You still got film? All right. It's going to be one of those things where you're going to be watching the whole tour from here, you know, all down. Let me know how it turns out. That's cool. I like it. That's cool. All right. Pender also orders Thomas' brigade to support the artillery on Hare's Ridge. So out of 4 brigades, basically what he orders Thomas's Georgians to do is to stand fast. All right, never mind. So Thomas's brigade, out of 4 brigades, Thomas's is placed in reserve, and Pender is going to make this attack with only 3 out of his 4 brigades. So I got Thomas out of the way. All right. Now, meanwhile, as I said, Scales' brigade is closed up on Heath, specifically Brockenbrough's. Pender had the brigade halt while Perrin's men came up on line. So now he's getting Perrin and Scales lined up together. Pender sent a messenger to Heath and asked if his division, "General Heath, does your division require any support?" "No, sir. We are driving the enemy most gallantly." That's a quote I just made up, but it sounded good. Therefore, Pender had therefore Pender had his men stand down, so they're resting. This is where we get to the point where the North Carolinians run out of gas. I've already described this to you. The South Carolinians under Perrin are going to start coming up through them. As they get up here and pass through the North Carolinians start shouting at them, "Go in, South Carolina, go in." They pass through the ranks. They get roughly to right here where we are, approximately right here, and they look across there and they see the Union line reforming. This is where the Confederates halt also, and they start to reform. Now what we're going to do basically now is we're going to focus on what the program was supposed to be about, and that is basically Perrin's brigade with the side story into Scales. So in other words, to your left, ladies and gentlemen, you have Scales brigade that is passing behind the barn up on top. They're aligning themselves with Perrin's brigade right here, and you have Perrin's brigade that probably extends, I don't have a mark on this ridge, but it probably extends down to approximately at least where those cannon are down there. Into that area. All right. No objections from the jury. All right, so let's start with Scales, which is over here to your left. Alfred Scales is born in North Carolina, November 26, 1827. Serves in the state legislature and one term of Congress. He's from Reidsville, if you're from North Carolina.